It says housing agency rules will force homeowners with good credit to subsidize high-risk borrowers. This is really interesting because Byron Lazine talked about this morning. I was interested to see what actually was in this. Now, I've had a couple lenders talk to me about this in the past. That was before this rule has been in effect already. Like this already passed, but I think as of May 1st, it's implemented.
1st. Yep.
Yeah. So read through it and tell me what your take is on it, Ian.
So I think about it similarly to how we discussed the recapture,
right,
for the school zones. It's like, I understand that they're trying to help more homeowners get into homes. I get that, but it's at the expense of people that that may already be having a hard time getting. I say hard time getting into homes, but you rarely know these people, everyone's situation as they're getting into the homes. You don't know what kind of money they're plopping down. You don't know where they're getting the money from. Somebody's getting the down payment from their grandmother just because they have good credit. Maybe they didn't buy anything yet, right? Like, you can't just rob Peter to pay Paul without having without having any kind of set criteria.
So do people a favor so they understand what's happening. Why don't you read through the article to explain what's happening? So go ahead.
Right here, experts said that borrowers with a credit score of 680 would pay more than $40 a month on a $400,000 mortgage to help people that have a lower credit score. Consumers with lower credit scores and less money for a down payment will be given better mortgage rates, specifically the mortgage rates, than they otherwise would have had in the form of wealth distribution.
So I believe it was on Byron's podcast this morning that he was talking about this, and I've read through this before. So I think they get to pay $40 less than the average person does. So they get a discount of $40, but the average person still stays the same. Yet even in this, it says article is misleading. Credit score of 780 getting better deals than broke 740 and under from single. Oh, sorry, I'll pull up the comment. Sorry, Patrick. Thanks, Patrick, for the comment. But articles misleading. Credit scores over 780 are getting better deals. They broke under 740 from single bucket to several. So, it's interesting because it's the same thing with like when they're talking about doing affordability in Austin. Yeah. I love how they always talk about let's do affordability. More housing means more affordability. Yet really they're forcing. So there's an article out in Austin Business Journal today talking about how they want to change the zoning, and how they're going to do this is if you're building a massive complex and you give 10% to affordable housing, then they'll actually give you a break on that build. So it's not really creating more affordable housing. It's subsidizing and having more expensive housing, taking care of affordable housing, or what is deemed affordable. Is it the best way to do it? I don't know. I'm not a politician. I don't run the city. Yet I don't feel like, as somebody that has to offset the cost of somebody else, I already have a 10-year-old that I have to take care of and a wife. So I don't want to take care of your 10-year-old, but that's just me.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back. It's very similar. I don't know about very similar. I got to be careful with that. But yeah. I equate it to something like, if I don't have kids, but I have to pay extra property taxes to a school where my kids are not attending.
Yeah.
Why? Right? Like, how do I feel about that? Why do I feel this way? It's somewhat like that.
Yeah. So a lot of people are, drop a comment below. How are your thoughts, or what are your thoughts on the fact that potentially people with higher credit scores are going to get dinged to help people with lower credit scores? I remember,
it's interesting,
man.
I had a manager. I had a manager when I was in the corporate world. He said, listen, you never want to give 100% when you're doing work. Like when you're talking about goals and all that, you always want to give like 80%, because then you always have room for improvement and nobody can ever see your best. And I thought that was so funny, because that makes me think of this. You don't want to, it's like, you don't want to have a perfect credit score. You want to keep it down a little bit so that you're not dinged for it or having that expectation. I don't
Yeah.
know the word,
So
but
so
it's
the
funny
moral
to
of the
me.
story is don't pay your bills. So
No. Don't pay one bill.
yeah, but acquire more
It's just
debt.
one.
Acquire more debt. That way you can't afford a house,
Yeah.
but you have a worse credit score. That way you get subsidized. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
So, gosh, I don't want to subsidize anyone outside of my family. I'm a good person. I pay too much taxes. Here's my question. If the person has 5 children, a single mother living in an apartment, should they have to pay more taxes?
Well,
Just
theoretically,
overall.
theoretically, they do get more subsidies as far as like they don't pay, like they have, everybody gets a child tax credit, whatever that is. Everybody's different. So you're saying
Yep.
single mother working from home,
Yep.
it depends on what they make. Do they pay more? Like taxes are a progressive thing, right?
Yes.
So as you make more, you pay more in taxes. So, it's all a relative thing. If you buy a property and the property taxes go up, you're spending more money on property taxes. That goes back to the city. It goes back to the funds. So,
I also said living in an apartment.
Living in an apartment. That's what I'm saying. But the whole goal is to potentially get out of apartment so you can buy a home, right? So you can gain wealth, because a lot of people make money and they gain wealth out of buying and selling homes.
Yes.
If you're stuck in an apartment now, prices are too high, interest rates go up, and property taxes are out of control expensive because they keep going up. You're not going to be able to afford the property taxes on top of what you pay for taxes. So that is something to think about.
Well, I guess my point to that whole rant is that she has to focus on her children. If she's paying more in taxes, that might be one less meal for one of her kids, right?
Yeah.
And so if the thought is that she pay her fair share, you don't know the circumstance.
Right, for sure.
We never know these circumstances. But if she's living in an apartment, she's not paying the property taxes unless she owns investment properties, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And we talk about this a lot. People are voting on things like you need to pay more taxes, but they're not actually paying the taxes themselves, or they're on subsidized systems. So they may not understand how that's actually impacting families that are just barely getting into a house. Right? Because there might be another person in that same situation that just bought a house 3 months ago. And now you're like, no, increase their property taxes. But that argument, you either all have to pay something similar.
Yeah.
I think it just needs to be reconsidered, that perspective of
and keep in mind that this all started realistically from talking about subsidizing people getting mortgages. Now, I'm not saying that people that have a lower credit score should have to pay a higher interest rate. What if people that had a lower interest rate pay, or a lower FICO score paid the same interest rate as somebody with a higher FICO score? Now, the flip side is that the person that worked really hard to get that high FICO score, why did they work that hard to get that high FICO score if they're getting the same as somebody else? So there can be arguments made on both sides, but that's kind of where this started. And then we talk about increasing property taxes on top of that, because the reality is, and this is where things get tough. The reason why we have seen such huge increases, especially last year in rental rates, is that when a landlord gets that new property tax bill and that property tax bill increases, they have to raise those rates, that monthly rate, in order to make up for the fact that they just increased property taxes. Now, this happens a lot, and so that's why we saw such a big increase. Being down 11% now is going to be an interesting situation where more people are having to list their properties. And so it's a double-edged sword either way you look at it. You can't have one and be amazing and without the other. So it's something to think about both sides. Thanks for watching this short of the Real Amigos podcast. For more live streams, hit here. For more clips, hit here. We'll catch you on the next one.